Say hello.
Hi, Caesar.
Caesar.
Hi, Caesar.
Hey, how are you?
It is a rare sighting.
I just got the link on both devices, so thank you very much, Maggie.
Okay. Okay.
Start.
So, Claude, do you want to chair or do you want me to chair?
You can chair, Maggie. Yeah.
Would someone like to do the welcome to country?
Acknowledgement. I'll do that.
Yeah,
if you like.
you do the acknowledgement.
We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on wherever we are gathered, the various places, and mindful that the land that we are sitting on and working on and has never been ceded. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and emerging. We pay and we're mindful always that our presence here has been in some times been also very harmful to them in so many different ways. But we look forward to working with them in reconciliation and also supporting the voice for them in the Constitution, having their voice in the Constitution. Okay.
Thank you. Look, the meeting today is really going to be about what we do with this webinar, when, how, who, why, whatever we need to discuss to get this up and going. Just to let you know that Katrina, here's David Tutty, he's just arriving. Katrina did raise the possibility of us having more regular meetings, but I think at this stage, let's go to the task, and whatever meetings that we need, we will, slot in. And then when this is over, we will come to some kind of agreement about how regular and, what the timing of ongoing meetings. So as there's some, forward planning. Okay. So, so I don't know who would like, Caesar, would you like to, hello, David.
Hi, David.
Nice to see you. We've just started, so we're waiting on Caesar and Rita, a little bit late, but that's okay. We're up and going now.
As long as we are in time for the 8 o'clock football match.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's work hard now, so we're free. Caesar, do you want to kick off? The idea has emerged to have a webinar on Patchman Terrace. It's sort of like a replacement in some ways for our national conference, but it's also a recognition of this year celebration of Patchman Terrace anniversary. So Caesar, do you want to proceed?
Yeah. We have talked about this for 2 or 3 meetings now. And by the way, this is the 60th anniversary of Patchman Terrace, not the 75th.
That's me, sorry.
No, it's a small thing. Trying to bring a few threads together, because I've also written the article and so on. There is a merit in having a webinar in place of the conference. The conference would have been on, from what I understand, would have been on Patchman Terrace, but that just did not eventuate. It makes sense for Pax Christi to recall on Patchman Terrace in its 60th anniversary. It was issued this year, 60 years ago, against a very troubled backdrop. But John the 23rd, among other things, was the Pope who had a hand in diffusing the Cuban Missile Crisis and get the 2 Ks, Kennedy and Khrushchev, quietly, silently, behind the scenes, agreeing to withdraw their forces. And, we were on the brink of a nuclear war. The reason why it's important or significant or meritorious for Pax Christi to focus on Parchamenteris in its 60th anniversary is this. Pax Christi was founded at the end of World War II. And 18 years later was this encyclical. And when when Pax Christi was founded, it was founded on an idea of reconciliation and peace and so on. And we know the context. But I don't recall anything that has been written by Pax Christi as some sort of a foundational document and so on. We have moved from the idea to activity and actions and network and all that. But in 63, when Parchamenteris emerged, from what I can see, it was seized as something like a foundational document for Pax Christi. Parchamenteris elaborated such a holistic overview concept at the heart of which was peace, that it, in a way, was a gift to Pax Christi because it elaborated Pax Christi's own understanding of what peace is, what we must do about it, avoid war and all those things. So that's one reason I think why it's important for Pax Christi to talk about Parchamenteris in its 60th anniversary because of this possibility, this fact that we look upon Parchamenteris as a foundational document. The thing about Parchamenteris is not just about peace, peace as military, peace as defense, peace as war. Of course, war is part of the peace thing. The important thing about Parchamenteris is there are so many beautiful lines. For instance, the encyclical says, peace is but an empty word if it is not founded on the basis of justice, truth, charity, and freedom. And in that sweeping statement, John the 23rd looks at humanity in total and seeing a disordered, I'm using disordered not in a clinical sense, but a chaotic and, sociologically speaking, disordered society. And that was his summation. And in that, he has brought different dimensions. And that comes in my article as well. There are many threads in Parchamenteris. It's not possible to include all of that in a seminar, in an article, etc. It's a rich document. What I've taken from this art, from the encyclical, are three prongs. One, human rights. John the 23rd says, human rights make for the integrity of human dignity. Without human rights, we are not basically human. We are human, but not fully human. Then he revives the old Christian concept of the common good. And the common good relates to the resources, what we have, etc., belonging to all. And the more that happens, the more those resources are shared, the more the common good arises, the better for society. You disrupt that, and you have an unbalanced society, some having more, a few having more, and the more having less. And that summarizes the situation today and then. And the third thing is war. Now, John the 23rd was in a unique position because he had seen the horrors of Nagasaki and Hiroshima 18 years earlier. But he had come to the brink of a nuclear war in 1962, a few months before the encyclical was proclaimed. And he was involved behind the scenes in diffusing that. And it's important for me to give you a little summary of what happened. Kennedy and Khrushchev, they knew that this Cuban Missile Crisis was such, it is growing and growing. And I think all of us were around at the time, of course, much younger, but etc. Both Khrushchev and Kennedy did not want to have a confrontation because they knew right away it would be nuclear. And they both wanted to withdraw. But the people within the two countries, Americans and the Soviets, Russian people said, no, let's go and hammer them. Let's go and fight them. Each one thought they could knock the other. But both Kennedy and Khrushchev knew that it's not going to happen, nuclear war. And if it happened, it would be devastating. Around that time, a significant journalist by the name of Norman Cousins, he was the editor of a major magazine. He was in the White House. And Kennedy said to Norman Cousins that you have good relationship with the Vatican because he was a Catholic. See what you can do about it. And Norman Cousins then got in touch with a close associate of John the 23rd. And of course, it reached John the 23rd. And John the 23rd was asked to find a way to diffuse this. And John the 23rd put out a statement that war is all those things. And the following day, Pravda put out a headline saying, the world is calling for peace. And Kennedy then seized that as well. And that was the moment of the diffusing of the crisis. So John the 23rd knew what he was talking about. And so what is he saying? He's saying that the exact words I don't get, but roughly it says, it is not reasonable anymore in the context of the atomic war, etc. It is not reasonable anymore to consider war as a rational solution to restore rights which have been violated. And therefore, he makes a whole argument of disarming, banning of nuclear weapons, banning of war, and so on. And in my article, I'll finish with this. In my article, I'm not just finished with what Parliamentaries said 60 years ago, but I'm relating it to what's happening 60 years now. Because today, we are in no better situation. In fact, we're in a worse situation. Today, our military, our forces, or armaments, or weapons have become so sophisticated, much more than in 1962 or 63. And we can now do things weapon-wise that we could not do before. And in fact, today's Cold War, if you read analysis going on, today's Cold War is seen as worse than the first Cold War, because the first Cold War at least allowed a room for some dialogue, which the present one is not. John the 23rd talked about an order based on justice, peace, truth, and charity. And yet we have today a conflict of orders. There's the internationally rules-based order, but we know what it is. It's basically a militarized it is basically a non-militarized version of a militarized order, the so-called, and it is not delivering peace as it's supposed to be. And that order, the international rules-based order from the West, basically, is rejected by China and the other side as a new form, a new invisible form of racism. So right there you have two orders in conflict, which is not based on justice, truth, charity, and freedom. And that is no way to peace. Now, not only we are talking about the atomic age, which was a step change, gunpowder was a step change when the nature of war changed from bows and arrows to cannon, musket fire, and all that. The atomic weapon was this next step change that changed the nature of war. And now the third step change is happening is the AI. Militaries are now absorbing, incorporating AI, because AI is going to be accurate, is going to be effective, is going to kill more people, and is going to be algorithm-based. That is, self-autonomous.
Yes. Okay. I'm just wondering.
I'll finish one line. That is roughly what I'm saying in the article. And that, in a way, gives you a sense of how Parchamentaris relates to today.
Okay.
And Pope Francis has followed in that tradition. Thank you.
Okay. Look, I did mute you. I did mute you all before because there was some interference. So just unmute yourself if you'd like to say something.
Was I muted?
I would just really like to ask Caesar whether he sees his article as a precursor to this webinar.
That was, I think, that was the suggestion. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Have you finished the article?
Almost.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Harry, do you want to say?
Yes. Well, first of all, listening to Caesar, it's not clear whether you're actually talking about Parchamentaris or whether you're talking about the sort of developing world crisis back then. But anyway, I think if we're going to be talking about Parchamentaris, I think we need to be very clear just what's in it, what it was saying, and how it relates to where we are today. And I sat down, I remember very vividly when Parchamentaris came out, and incidentally, it came out before the Cuban crisis. In fact, I actually
before
studied...
that? Sorry, excuse me, before that?
Before the Cuban crisis.
It came after the Cuban, after.
Sorry, no, it came out before.
The Cuban crisis.
Yes, Cuban crisis came out around about April '63. The Cuban crisis was October, November. I can't remember exactly when. It was a very different world in many ways. I mean, I think perhaps if you were around then, to remember the impact of John the 23rd, not just what he said, but who he was, an impact certainly on the churches and on the wider world. And it sort of opened up, or he cashed into and became part of, I think there was a much more hopeful atmosphere back then that humanity, we could actually move forward and deal with the issues that were before us. If you remember, it was before John Kennedy had been assassinated. It was before the Vietnam War. It was in the context of decolonization and newly independent states, and all sorts of those sort of things were going on. We weren't nearly as aware of corruption. We weren't nearly as aware of empire, even though empire was very much there, and of the limitations of the political system. The second thing, I sat down and actually read it this afternoon, and the other thing that struck me was that John 23rd, it's written very much within the traditional Christendom framework, perhaps within the traditional Thomist framework. Now, of course, he deals with that very creatively. In Parchamentaris, it's really a spelling out of what we mean by shalom, the Christian vision of peace. And it starts with the individual, the family, workers, women, and only then does he move on to nation states and international affairs. Francis, it seems to me, is dealing with today. His encyclicals have been dealing very much with today. I mean, back then there was no talk of climate change, for example, no talk of the earth or anything like that. So, I mean, I think we have to do a lot of rethinking. And to me, I mean, whether Parchamentaris is a historical document, but all sorts of things have developed and moved on. And the world we're living in now, I think, is very different. John the 23rd seems to assume that sort of international authorities, international leaders, and so on can be taken seriously, they can be trusted. Well, of course, now we know very much that that's not true. So now we know that the whole creation is in crisis. Now we know that the international situation is developing in several different directions, and so on. And it seems to me that's our starting point. So, yeah.
Can't we do both? We can celebrate this foundational document, but then move on to where it shows light on the present day. Can't we do both?
Well, I don't know. Who's actually read it for a start?
Well, I've
read it twice, or maybe more than twice. All of us have read it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's all right, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah. Okay, Claude, do you want to speak?
Just one clarification. Parchamenteris came out on the 11th of April in 1963.
Yes.
The Cuban Missile Crisis was in 1962.
Yes.
In April, in October, and in October. So it came in after the missile crisis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yes. I mean, what were the three areas in your article? You had human rights. Sorry, I missed the second one.
Common good.
Common good.
And war.
So they are the three themes in your. Yeah. And is that all relating to Parchamenteris?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are other. As I was saying earlier, it's not possible for all of Parchamenteris to come into one article. I'm looking at the link. So I've chosen three that are relevant. And what Harry is saying is true, because the world is different.
Yes.
But the encyclical is not about the machinery of war and the details of war, or about the principles underlying human society and what makes it better. It's more about that. And those principles, those values can apply even today as compared to then. Okay, climate change is a new area. And so on. But as Katrina said, we can do both. Because I see this webinar, I believe Pax Christi is a body that is not, banner waving and things like that. We don't do that. We don't go in the streets and fight and this and that. Our the contribution of values. And Pax Christi is something that is based on the values we know, and we want those values to be disseminated. Parchamenteris is a good document that elaborates those values. So we can both remember Parchamenteris at the same time celebrate what Pax Christi is doing in terms of today's world, but using the blueprint, as it were, from Parchamenteris.
Claude's been trying to get in, Maggie.
Yeah, Claude.
Look, the 3 points that Caesar has outlined from Parchamenteris strike me as being very relevant and somehow connected with the whole question of just peace that we're talking about now. It's something that Pope Francis is talking about, and I think there's a correlation or a connection with all that. So we're not way off, because when we're talking about human rights and human dignity, we're talking about the common good and also war. And I think that they sort of come together in this area as well. I'm just making that point,
Okay. Would David Tutty? David, you speak? Unmute.
Thank you. Tomorrow is the launch of this year's social justice statement from the Bishops' Conference.
Yep.
And it's going to be on listening, learning, and love in the context of First Nations.
Yep.
And seeing, I suppose, a new impetus or a new journey of walking together, same sort of words as Uluru Statement from the Heart, for the sake of reconciliation, for the sake of greater peace in this land. And I would hope that that if we did a webinar around Parchment Terrace, that would be an aspect that was brought out.
Okay. All right.
In fact, Maggie, if I can say,
yes,
in response to David, this article is just 1,500 words, so not much I can say. But in my human rights section, I've referred to the right of indigenous peoples to live and act in freedom. And therefore, I've been saying in that article that the voice referendum gives us the opportunity to help enable that to happen. So a webinar that included a focus on the voice in terms of human rights and in terms of listening, etc., can very well be part of it.
Okay. Okay. Would anyone else like to speak and respond? Harry?
Well, just briefly, I think we should be asking ourselves, what is going to be the message of this webinar? I mean, we've casting a very wide net, but what are we going to say in this webinar? I think we need to think about that.
I hope it's not a repeat of what we heard a few weeks ago. Katrina was there too.
Oh,
What was that?
so I was poor old
Bruce Duncan. Yeah.
Bruce Duncan was as boring as hell.
No, to answer Harry, Maggie, if I can answer
yes, go.
point. I mean, webinars don't go with point 1, point 2, point 3 objectives and scientific kind of it's not a scientific activity as such. Webinars like these present the canvas appealingly, convincingly, and so on. And that canvas already suggests a message in there, a canvas that suggests we cannot have a world the way it is now. It's there already. The message is there. The whole canvas is weighted in the direction of a better world. So there's a message there. Now, the discussion that takes place at the webinar and the presenters there can sharpen it, sharpen those very messages in the canvas, and that becomes then the outcome of the webinar. The next point I would like to say is that people who come to our webinars are not just tabula rasas, blank slates. They have their mind, they have the experience, and so on. So two things. Firstly, when they come to a webinar, they also interact with what is being said. And that creates outcomes. But more importantly, people who are with us, who are people like us, people who come to our webinars, can then take what they get from this webinar to other forums, to other meetings, to other areas, and so on. So it's an ongoing thing. So we are both a seed, at the same time we are directional in the way we present a canvas.
I think people are very aware that we need a better world. They've heard that before, because it's said again and again and again. I think what we need to be focusing on just what can we, how can we actually move towards it in a concrete way in specific areas? And how does things like Pachym Terrace and Francis and Cyclicals and other, maybe the World Council of Churches and whatever, might they help us to do that?
That can be part of the presentation. But Harry, you have been in this business for so many years. You have been trying to get the church involved in the peace issue for 30, 40 bloody years. Have you succeeded? But you still go on. You have to go on and on and on. This business of we have heard before is absolutely, I find it trifling. Of course, we all know the world is not in a good shape. We all know the world has to be better. But are we the ones to come with an answer and say, this is the way to go? That's a bit presumptuous.
I don't think no, I think I'm looking for possibilities and directions rather than a whole, lot of grand statements.
But that's why the webinar can in the flyer, etc. We have had so many webinars. We can finalize, we can sharpen it. It's not a new thing we're doing.
Yeah, well, I guess we hope from this meeting that we have some guidance as to the next steps, right? I think that's the purpose of this meeting. So we have to have, are we on board about this? I mean, I rather like Katrina's suggestion, Peace on Earth in 2023. I mean, it sounds, I mean, it's not as if we haven't heard that before. We will always, but if it's located in 2023, that's now. So I don't know what anybody else thinks about that.
Oh, Dean.
Hmm?
Well,
Katrina?
that sounds a good theme.
Yes.
I think we need to have a proposal as to what the webinar might look like.
Well,
The format you're talking about now, aren't you?
Sorry?
The format.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, we have sort of seconded Caesar in his article to provide, like, I guess, these bones or some kind of guidance as to where we go with Patchman Terrace. And I guess, we need to see that article?
Yeah, we need to see the article.
But not as an examination, please.
No, not as a critique.
No.
Yeah, I mean, because personally, I find, I think that the structure, if you've come upon in your writing to decide on capturing those three areas, I don't have any objection to those three areas either.
Yeah. Maggie, I was thinking that, again, this is a webinar, let's say with 3 presenters, but not more than 5-6 minutes each. So it's a very brief presentation.
Yes.
Because of the human rights dimension.
Yes.
And I've referred to the voice. We need to have someone relating that to the voice.
David, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think in the last 60 years, we've grown in a bit more of a comprehensive understanding of things that contribute towards peace. You got to remember Parchment Terrace is within a particular context, and particularly the ecological and the First Nations issues and the interconnection between those two, and the learning that we have to do from that. I think there needs to be input around that. I'd be willing to do something if people were interested in that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that fits. That fits with that. I mean,
human rights.
You need to bring that up and all that. But you need, if you want to reflect the encyclical in the webinar, then we need to have another speaker who can reflect on the common good, the inequalities in our time. Let me finish. Then the third one would be someone who can reflect on the state of war So these three sort of angles can make it a rich experience. It's a backdrop of Parliamentaries. And the article is only a backdrop. To this,
Yeah, I'd like to see it, what their last point brought to discussion, to a discussion of the God of war, put it in that sort of theological context. That if you look at AUKUS and ANZUS and all the militarization that's going on, it's really, and the imperial dominance was saying that we are worshipping the God of war, and that peace means saying no to all that from a spiritual point of view. And this is, I think, it would be an important message. And that would lead on to the what David's talking about.
David, do you want to speak? Unmute.
Unmute. At the moment, I'm doing some work around, I suppose, images of God and trauma. And I've got a book here. I'll just show the book, but I'll read the title, The Structural Trauma of Western Culture. And it's written by an Israeli academic. But he argues that in the Genesis story of the binding of Israel, of Isaac and offering Isaac as a sacrifice, there's a bloodthirsty God that seems to have continued past Jesus into Western culture. And how do we counter that?
Yeah,
is the challenge. How do we counter that? Images of God and around social justice particularly is something that I've done quite a bit of work on in the past.
I was just reflecting on this morning's reading. The first reading was, Moses not being allowed into the promised land. And I kind of thought, what sort of a God is this that punished Moses so drastically? He wasn't allowed, he was allowed to look and he wasn't allowed in. So it's exactly what you're saying, David. We need to somehow extricate ourselves from that kind of a image of God.
Do you remember years ago there was a simple book called about good goats? The Lynn brothers, and I think one of them was a Jesuit priest, I think. And one of the little examples was about God sending people to hell.
Yeah.
And if God treats God's enemies like that, it's okay for us to drop a bomb on our enemies. That line of argument. And I think there's a huge amount of credibility, for a lot of people in that line of argument. If hell, the way we have created and focused on hell, and the fact that those that are just pleasing to a loving God, however we determine that, still go to hell. We've got to challenge all of this theology.
Yeah.
Well, to put it another way, if you go back, saying the Genesis creation story was supposedly, well, a lot of people believe it was actually put together when the Jews were in exile in Babylon, and the Babylonians had their own creation story, which was based on a violent conflict between their gods. And the Genesis one was given to the Israelites for them to learn the true values of their God. Now, it seems to me that the Babylonian gods are alive and well, and that's the problem.
Can I say this, Maggie? Now, if we want to bring all of these dimensions into one webinar, it'll just be mind-boggling and it'll be all over the place.
Yes.
Yeah.
My suggestion is what David was proposing is one part of it. We get someone who can talk about the issues of common good, social justice, inequality, and that sort of thing. and someone else who can talk about the direction of modern war and planning and AUKUS and all those things.
Yes.
In my article, I have not used words like God of War, etc., but it is implicit in what's happening. Those wonderful insights can become part of presentations. And that could be on the flyer. And that way we can combine both a backdrop that may not have everything you're saying, not possible.
Yeah.
But beautiful insights which we have now coming into the presentations. And that can bring up the discussion and all those things you're talking about.
I think if you start with Peace on Earth in 2023, we're not confined to the main categories of parliamentaries, because our categories are different. And
they're not categories, David. Sorry, David.
Those categories, I think we stay in the past.
David, they're not categories. They're simple areas. Human rights, common good, they are universal and they apply to all time.
I think it would be
no longer matter.
It would be good to include a theological reflection on some of the things that David and I have been talking about, to put that in context, because I think the theological reflection is different from John the 23rd's, just because we've moved on from that and we're sort of having to reframe it. And I'd like to see something about that, particularly if it's a Pax Christi event, to sort of give people a spiritual context, if you like, in which to talk about the other issues that we want to talk about.
Comes down to the fact that religion has often been used to justify violence and war. That's basic. Comes down to that, and I think I think it's worth noting that. But at the same time, I don't know whether we could go into the depth that's been suggested. Could I also suggest that if we want to talk about the common good and so on, maybe someone like Sandy Cornish might be a good person to have on this, because I think with her background in the social justice area, she may be one person with some skills in this area. That's just a suggestion.
Okay.
And I was thinking that for the voice, of course, David will do that, but the other possibility for the voice area that also goes in, that could go into the areas David mentions, is the speaker who spoke at the Brisbane conference, Anne Patel Gray. And I can talk to both.
Okay. Well, another one is Father Glenn Loughrey.
Yeah.
In Melbourne,
for the common good.
Had an article in
for the voice. For the voice.
For the voice.
On the, but he can sort of put that in a whole spiritual context as well. I'm going to have another article of his in the front of Next Disarming Times, and he talks specifically about the voice. But he really has thought it through, and if we can get hold of him, because he's flat out campaigning for the voice in the church.
The attraction of having Anne Patel Gray is to have someone from the Indigenous community.
Well, he's from the Indigenous community too.
Sorry, I mistook.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, that cat's tail is nice, Claude.
He's a pain in the bum. I'm just trying to get rid of him all this. Yeah.
No, sorry, I'm sorry, I missed that. Yeah.
Okay. So look, what do you want to do, Rita? Do you want to say, make any comment about, what's happening in this conversation?
I am imagining that we have the historical background. I don't know if this is making sense. And of course, that would include a lot of parliamentaries. That would be one aspect. But then we, like people have done today, say, however, the thinking has not so much changed, but moved on, developed. So we can use both the actual origins of thinking about human rights, etc., and how the thinking has developed. I don't know. Maybe that sounds too simplistic.
The thinking has developed, but I don't know that the action has developed in our lives.
Yes.
Let us see the article and the webinar.
Yeah.
Parts of the same sort of reality, not one against the other.
No.
That one enriches the other.
Yep.
What is missed in one,
Sorry,
we can
I'm
pick up
busy.
in the other. You know.
Sorry.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So if we had someone like Sandy Cornish for social justice in that area, someone like Patel Gray, say, or Glenn on the voice and that sort of area. We already have with Anne, okay, and then we need someone who can speak on the militarization along the lines we have discussed, what is happening, etc. It's important to touch because AUKUS is at the heart of it. We can also raise issues in relation to that. In terms of inclusivity, if you have either Anne Patel Gray or Glenn, they're non-Catholics, so it makes it automatically ecumenical.
Glenn's an Anglican.
Anglican, yeah, that's what I said.
He's not Catholic.
Either Anne or Glenn would be Anglican, are Anglican. Anne is, uniting, and Glenn is Anglican. You have Sandy, who is Catholic, and you need someone who can formulate some thinking on the military side. And
someone from civil society?
Yeah, what about Margie Beavis from the Medical Association? If she could contain, I'm not sure whether she's a Christian or a Calathumpian or what, but
well, she would need to be aware.
Yeah.
Well, she relates well to Pax Christi, though, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've worked with her. I mean, that's not a problem. I think we need
Margie Beavis.
We need to see a draft and come back to it and finalize it. I mean, we can talk or keep talking like this all night, but we need to have something that we can actually work on. So perhaps I'm out to think if a couple of us could produce a draft and then meet again in a couple of weeks' time and just round it off.
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll be in the minutes. I'm recording this. I can share the recording with everyone so that they can hear exactly what people are saying or take it in further.
I'm talking about the next step, which I think is.
Yes, I know, Harry, but I mean, already there are many suggestions that have come forward in this session, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's only a question of, deciding which direction or what direction we're going to take. Claude, do you want to speak?
We have identified the directions already.
Yeah, I think
so. Yeah.
So, I think we've progressed quite well because even though there's been a lot of discussion on this and that, in my view, I think we've progressed and got a little bit of a schema, but we do need to meet again to bed it down.
Yeah. Could I just ask who was suggested?
Yeah.
Who was suggested to speak? Some from civil society or something. I had to just go out for a second.
I suggested Margie Beavis, who's a retired. She's a medical person.
Doctor.
Okay. Mapwall. Yeah. Okay.
She's very much into IPAN and ICANN, but she's aware of the militarization side.
Yeah.
That I was just
Okay.
suggesting.
Okay, no, that's okay.
The other suggestion I'd like to make is that whatever Caesar comes up with in his paper becomes prescribed pre-reading for the conference.
That could be useful, yeah.
For the webinar.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So do we need to look at some sort of date? Like, it might be a bit premature, but something to work towards, you know?
Well,
yes.
So the thing is, there have been names. People have named, been named. Yeah, I think we need a date if there's going to be any movement, or do we meet 2 weeks from now and then absolutely make decisions about who we ask, or do you want to proceed now?
I think one question, do we have it before or after the referendum? Because that will make a big difference.
That's October then, isn't it?
Well, we don't know. We think it's October the 14th.
Mid-October.
We don't know. But if it's, if it's happened, of course, whether it gets up or doesn't, that will influence how we approach it.
I thought, Caesar, you had a bit of a time frame, didn't you? You said, like, if we bed down something by early September, was it?
If we bed this down, even in the next 1 or 2 weeks,
yes,
we can even aim for the end of September.
Yes. So
September 21 is World Peace Day. That was one.
That's right. Yes. So it'll be.
But
okay. Sorry.
End of September might be a doable thing.
Okay. So can I suggest, unless you want to talk any further, that we meet in a couple of weeks' time? I'll try and turn around these minutes, and I can actually share the recording with you if you're interested.
Okay.
Just to capture some of those words, some of the thoughts, and the content of what people were talking about. How does that sound? So can you get out your diaries, guys?
Yep.
Before that, Maggie, it's important also to have the speakers lined up.
That's right.
You don't want to wait for another 2 weeks,
Okay.
So maybe we should, if those 3 or 4 names mentioned could be approached with a date in mind. Okay. So let's have a look at the dates in September, a midweek webinar. I would say try 21 September. That's
21 is the International Peace Day. There's going to be a lot of activities on, I think, around that time. I would suggest it be the week after.
Yes. 28 is World Rabies Day. That's a nice day.
Okay.
It's the school holidays. Does that make a difference?
It's hard to know, Katrina.
Okay.
I think if we bed this down after the next 2 weeks, then promotion and marketing can happen along that, from then on. And so therefore it's a case of, who knows? The beauty of Zoom, of course, is you can log in anywhere.
Yeah, true.
If you have, and I would even be interested in probably I can put the program up on Humantix. Humantix, if there's no fee, you can use their service.
Yeah.
And that way it's like ordered.
Yeah.
And registered. I think it's important. I just was reading the other day, I don't know if other people read, but there were some really nasty people in some of the yes votes meetings, that came on board to disrupt and be racist and horrible. So I think going through Humantix would be good. and that way that part can just be monitored from, you know, afar without necessarily, you know, doing all the.
So are we aiming for what, September the 28th or something like that?
What's the 28th? Is that what date?
Thursday.
Thursday. A
It's
Thursday.
it's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that a good day?
Oh, well, it's as good day as any other day. I mean,
It's a week after the International Day of Peace, you know.
yeah. Okay.
Related to that, couldn't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So the 28th of September. So who we're talking about Sandy Cornish, Glenn or Anne? We
Lovely.
don't. And Anne Beavers, sorry.
Margaret Beavis.
Margie
Margaret.
Beavers.
Margie.
But there might be other suggestions there for.
What about David? I thought David was going to be involved. Yeah.
All right. He wanted to be involved in the voice, didn't you, David?
Yes.
No, I could probably do something around image of God and
Okay.
theology stuff.
Well, that would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Relating to the militarization?
Well, see, militarization's only a symptom, Caesar. It's
Yeah,
not
I know.
issue.
Okay, let's not get into it. I know that. But it's up area?
Okay. All right. I think we need, I don't want to be too singo about gender balance, but we do need a woman.
Well,
as one of
Sandy
the
Cornish,
speakers.
and we got there.
Sandy
Oh,
Cornish.
Sandy Cornish. Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe Anne Beavis. Maybe we have two women.
Well, we've got Anne Patel Gray, haven't we? Or we're going to go for Glenn. I think you'll have a hard job getting Glenn, probably.
You may do, especially at that time. I don't know. Well, you could ask.
Well, I think we then prioritise. Will someone start with Glenn? And then if Glenn's not available, don't tell Anne. We ask Anne.
Yeah.
If you let me know, I can contact Anne.
Okay.
No.
Well, I can contact Glenn if you want me to.
Well, Harry, can you make contact with Glenn to see if he's available or interested?
Yeah.
Okay. And
what
you're going to have to communicate with Caesar if he's not. So then Caesar will contact Anne.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So, David, you're free for your session. And what about your suggestion, Katrina? Beavers? Sandy Cornish. Who's going to contact Sandy Cornish?
Oh, right. Who knows her?
Claude.
Claude?
Well, I can or Caesar, but she has spoken at one of our seminars before, and she was quite good, I thought, the Fratelli Tutti. And she's been, she could talk on the common good aspect of it, yeah?
Yeah, that's what you suggested. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So will you do that, Caesar?
Sorry?
Will you contact her?
No, Claude is.
Claude will contact Sandy.
I'll contact her.
Claude will. All right.
Yeah.
Claude, yeah.
So the thing is, Caesar, it may be good if these speakers have some, like even a draft of maybe your article. What do you say about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
So what time are we looking at? So we've got to give them a date and a time, you know?
Yeah.
We need a time. We've got a date, but we haven't got a time.
Well, my recommendation, like it probably is 7 o'clock. I mean, you're not going to do it in the day, are you?
No.
I think.
So 7.
What about 7 o'clock? I'm just thinking that people can have early dinner and then they're free. Otherwise, you make it later, depending on, I don't know.
7 to 8:30. Is that too long?
That sounds fine to me.
Yeah. And as much as possible, also for people like in Western Australia, if they want to join us, it's 2 hours difference at the moment.
Yes.
It might be 3 hours by then. I'm not sure, but it's not too early.
Late.
Yeah.
Or they're early, aren't they?
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 hours.
So 7 o'clock would suit WA, do you reckon?
Well, it'll be either 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in Western Australia.
Okay. All right. Okay. So have we all got our tasks in mind? Harry, get in touch with Glenn, and if he's not available, you go to Caesar. Caesar will get in touch with Anne. David, you've got to do your bit. We know you, and Claude, you're going to get in touch with Sandy Cornish and see how we go. And the date is the 28th from 7 till 8:30. Okay.
Right.
And it's called, are we happy about the title?
Yeah.
Which is what was it?
Peace on Earth in 2023.
I suppose we could add and beyond, but I don't know.
Well, I think we.
Let's play around.
Yeah. Okay. That's the draft. That's the draft
Draft
name.
title.
A draft title. Okay. Unless someone can come up with something.
So who's drafting? I think we need to draft a flyer already.
Yeah, I might start work on that if you like.
Yes,
Okay.
you do that, Katrina. That's great. Just make it easy for me if you produce it in Word, and then I can play with it, you know.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
Or what is it, PowerPoint or something.
Okay.
But not PDF.
So then we meet in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and 2 weeks'
With all
time. Is Wednesday night okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. I didn't look at that.
So Wednesday, that would be Wednesday the 30th of August.
Yep.
Okay.
I can't. No, I've got something on that night. I've got spirituality in the pub. I'm sorry.
What about the 31st?
Yeah, 31st is fine. Is that any?
How does that suit everyone?
Well, so that's a
That's a Friday, Thursday.
It's a Thursday evening, 31st of August.
Okay, good. Thank you.
at 6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock. Okay.
Okay, that's good. Thanks, Maggie.
Okay.
Right. Okay, and I'll see if I can turn these minutes around in less than 5 weeks.
Right.
Okay. Would anybody like to say anything else before
Go
we
Matilda.
Oh, go Matilda. Yeah.
That's right.
We like, apparently it's amazing how people are just so tuned into that. Maybe we're just looking for a bit of relief from the troubled world.
Yeah, that's right.
The God of sport.
Watching it.
Sorry?
I'm not watching it.
Aren't you? Oh.
I'll wait for the score, that's all.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Yes, and
See you.
we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.